empowering you through the voice of truth with your host, Dr. Joel Hunter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Joel Hunter, host of Power Talks, empowering you through the voice of truth. On today's program, Joan Faulkner, CEO and President of Hope Helps, is here, and Heather Gergen, Program and Case Manager for Hope Helps. They will share how Seminole County's Hope Helps prevents and reduces homelessness in Central Florida by equipping individuals and families to become self-sufficient through, here's an acronym, housing, outreach, prevention, and education. Prepare to be inspired. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Thanks for having us.
You guys are just rock stars in Oviedo and beyond. And so let me start out by asking, Joan, why don't you give us a little bit of the history of how Hope Helps started and kind of what you do in the community?
So we were founded in 2007. Our founder, Chrissy Goss, had actually just met a family during her son's soccer game that was homeless, pregnant. They just asked her for water. And in that conversation, she wanted to get to know them, wanted to see how she could help them. In a nutshell, she found that there was obstacles in helping families in need. And in a nutshell, that's how it started. Her pastor had told her about a thrift store in Oviedo that needed to be taken over. And she was an entrepreneur doing a different kind of work and not social services work. And she said, well, how does that tie into what I'm doing? He said, you could use proceeds to help families in need. So, long story short, she took over the thrift store and within 3 months developed a food pantry serving about 30 to 50 households in a week. Hope is now serving between 200, 250 households in a week. 12 years later, almost 13 years later. So a resource center was built. I say built. It was a small 5,000 square foot facility that held a thrift store, resource center, food pantry, and admin offices. So we were pretty cramped in there for 8 years. And there's several programs that were built beyond that too. It's just grown tremendously in the past 12 years.
So Heather, you're a social worker. You do case management. Tell us about how you get involved in the lives of the folks who come in originally they come in for resources. They're in need.
Right.
But they need more than resources. So how do you get involved in those lives, and what type of things do you see that you can help with?
Right. So a lot of times we'll have families coming to Hope simply for the food because there is a need for food in the household. Right. And we're able to meet with them when they come in, have a one-on-one conversation to see what issues are occurring that brought them to seek out the food, whether it's lack of employment, lack of childcare, unaffordable housing, things like that. So we're working with them to see what their specific situation is about.
Great. And how did you, people love to hear personal stories. I'm coming to you next. How did you get involved wanting to be a social worker? What was that, what was that calling like on your life?
Right. I think just around college time, figuring out what I could do to be able to help people and make a difference. And with social work, I really like the aspect of you're not doing things for the clients, you're trying to help empower them so they can do things for themselves.
Right.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
She was an intern with us many years ago while she was in college, and then came back and has worked with us for 4 years as a case manager.
Oh, so. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. So, Joan, you're kind of head of the whole shooting match here, and that isn't a role people lightly step into. What motivated you to do what you're doing?
That's a really good question. I was actually working alongside our founder at the time that she met that family, and she reached out to friends and people in her church just asking for help, like, I need gift cards, and I need a car seat, and I need all these things to help this family. And so my husband and I, pitched in. At the time, I was working for another organization that focused on poverty-focused development in other countries. And at the time, people would say, well, why don't you help locally? You know, there's a local need. So that resonated more the more that Chrissy had done. And I volunteered actually for 2 years at Hope. And then it has just evolved into what it is now, and then became CEO in 2011.
Now, part of the DNA of the organization is kind of asking around and getting other people involved. You know, Chrissy didn't say, boy, this is mine alone to answer this particular need. She kind of got other people involved.
Sure.
And I know one of the things that Hope helps us very well is you have lots of partnerships with helping organizations, congregations, other people, volunteers. Describe that to us. Tell us about some of your partners and how they're involved, or how you refer to other organizations in town that can answer needs that you may not be particularly set up for.
Right. Wow, the partnerships, volunteerism, we're not lacking. We have in a week probably 120 regular volunteers.
By the way, when I came out, and these volunteers love it.
Yeah, they do.
They love doing their job. They love the family. They love each other.
They do.
There's just a great spirit in this place.
There is. I'm glad you felt that too, because we feel it all the time.
Yeah.
And some have been there since the beginning. So they all get name tags after you volunteer 50 hours. It says volunteering since. It gives the year, so you can see how long people have been with us. And they just have a heart and a passion for what we do, and they're there every week. It's incredible. We had 31,000 hours of volunteer time last year. That's a lot.
Wow.
That's more than our staff.
That's so great.
But we're really blessed to have them. We have an interfaith coalition of about 22 churches that, of all different faiths, that they supply financial support, volunteers, and they host some of our events because they're so big. Our facility can't hold that.
Gotcha.
So, we have our Christmas in the City event coming up, and we'll serve probably 350 households.
Now describe that to us. What is the Christmas in the City event?
So this is our 12th year doing Christmas in the City, and did you want to talk about it? I mean, I could.
Let's jump in here.
Sure. So it's just a real fun day for the families to come together, have a great time. There's toys for the children. There's a family meal that's hot served for the families to sit and enjoy the music. We have a stage for all of that. They get a bag of food to take home for their actual Christmas day to be able to have a fun Christmas meal, and a little gift card. So if they want a turkey or if they want a vegetarian option, they can go to the store and pick that out. They get socks, underwear, blankets, a little bit of everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's great is it's a day of giving. It's not the day they have to bring their information and meet with a case manager. So they do that throughout the year, but this is a day they can't afford to get these things. So they can come to the event and they're just loved on by the community, and there's worship music all day, and they leave with a portrait of their family. Like, most people, in this situation can't afford a family picture. That's done for them. It's just a great day of giving. That's our favorite day.
That is so great. What are some of the other events that you kind of organize so that people can, participate with families? Part of what I realize in my time of working with people who are struggling financially, or they're in crisis, or they've gone through a trauma, is it's pretty isolating. They're pretty isolated from other families, and so some of these events are places where they can meet others that are also maybe going through some rough times, or they can meet some of the volunteers to to find out about their lives, or where they can get connected. In other words,
Right.
So how do you do that?
So a great opportunity for volunteers is at our food pantry. We have something called a pantry takeover day. We also have thrift takeover day too.
This sounds so inviting. I want to be at pantry takeover day.
So we created it almost 2 years ago now, because so many volunteers wanted to come and experience volunteering at Hope. And the regulars are there so often that they don't leave. So we kind of kicked them out on Wednesdays. And we have pantry takeover. So a faith group, civic group, a scout group, a business can come to our office for 4 hours. They get trained for 15 minutes, and they serve the community. It's like a team building thing, too.
Yeah.
But they get to meet us. They get to meet the volunteers and meet the families that we serve, and they learn what we do at Hope. And it's been pretty successful. I think this year we had 54 groups this year volunteering. So
see, that is
wonderful.
A form of education that's so important, because it doesn't just give you the knowledge. The experience means everything. Of being able to be with some of these families.
Exactly.
Speaking of the families or the individuals, Heather, let me come to you. You work probably most intensely in a sustained way with an individual or a family. Can you give us some sort of picture? I know there are people who are tuning in who this is really not a part of their world. They don't know, they're kind of, why don't they just get a job kind of folks? But give us a picture of somebody who is struggling for very good reasons, and then maybe how they have progressed in their lives to become more independent.
So we have a lot of single parents with children that there's an extra cost with that, and just the rent amounts that we see in this area for even just a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom are very high. They're working full time, but the pay is just not enough to be able to sustain everything. And then they also have to be able to provide for their family. So we've been able to work with clients where they meet with our financial counselors. We have volunteers who do that one-on-one. And then we also offer some budgeting classes just to work with them in different areas where they're able to cut back a little bit here, save a little bit there, because a lot of the families we do see, they don't have additional family support in the area. So they really are kind of on their own. So through the financial counseling and the budgeting classes, we've been able to see progress with certain clients with that. Just helping them to have that little bit of a backup, so when something does come up, like there's a car issue, or they have to miss work for a few days because their child is sick, they have that little bit of cushion to help them.
Good. I don't know how to ask this next question. I should have, but when you are working with these families, I'm sure there's a broad array of families and individuals, and say you run into a problem that you really can't fix. I mean, it's not what Hope Help does. Say there's a mental illness issue. What connections do you have throughout the community that you can make that that you can do a soft handoff, so to speak, and so that it's not just, well, here's a phone number you need to call. There's an actual way that you can be with that person to make sure that they get to the next helping person.
Right. So Christian Help, for example, is one of our partners that we work with really well, and we have a contact there that we would be reaching out to when someone needs that really one-on-one financial employment assistance to sit down, maybe with it's preparing for an interview or something like that. So I think it's just a matter of getting to know the different agencies in the area and knowing the individual staff members that you're able to work with them and say, we have experience with this before, we've sent other clients here and they've had good experiences.
Great.
Yeah.
Joan, I have a special interest in the homeless aspect of what you all do. I mean, there's lots of folks that struggle with food insecurities and are having employment issues and child care and other, circumstantial challenges like my car won't work or but how do you approach the whole big issue of homelessness and people who are unstably housed or precariously housed, or they're living in their car? I mean, what do you do in a case like that?
Right. That's the ongoing question in this community right now, I would say, because there's so many needs out there, and we're approached often with, hey, have you guys thought about doing this? Have you guys thought about helping people in this way? We're really trying to focus on our mission of prevention.
Right.
So our
Gotcha.
prevention model is keeping people in their homes.
Gotcha.
That's our primary goal,
Okay.
is to help with financial assistance for utilities, rental, food,
Good.
while they're going through the crisis.
Right.
What can you add to that? We're working, well, there's
Yeah.
not enough housing,
I
first
know.
of all.
Well, yeah, exactly.
that's a
and
tough
I just
part.
threw a
Yeah.
big elephant on top of everything.
That's
but-
okay. I was
Yeah.
going to say, we also work with, New Moves is an organization we
Great.
work with that
Yeah.
you're familiar with
Yeah,
them.
feel free to call anybody out
Okay,
on the program.
okay.
Just
Sure.
call them out.
And Heather could speak to this probably better than me, but we're working with a client right now who we met with just a couple weeks ago that's going through this program, and she'll be with them for a year. And although she's working with them, she's attached to a case manager at Hope to keep her on track.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
and that's a graduated scale of rent. So they, if someone is just getting back on their feet, you have the first and last month's rent.
Right.
They can't afford the first anyway. So how are they going to get to the second month?
Exactly.
So the New Moves allows them to start at a lower
Yeah.
scale and work their way up. It's a great idea. It's a
Yeah.
great program. So that's something that we're doing right now, is working with them.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, because this is when I wonder, when I watch a program like this, I always think, I wonder what got them involved and how they keep going. These are discouraging. This is discouraging work. You start off with a crisis. You have some people who don't have a background. Many people don't have a background of how to be independent, how to, improve your life and your lot, so to speak. And so it's, kind of like 2 steps forward and 1 step back, sometimes just 3 steps back. But so it's discouraging. How do you keep going in this? Because both of you,
He's got
I'm
the
sure,
good questions. He's
yeah.
got all the good questions.
Oh my goodness! I'm sure you just think, "What? I thought we were so much farther along here." How do you keep going?
For me, I would say it's the team I'm surrounded by, for one, and the volunteers. But our team is so strong. Heather's a great case manager. I feel like we have the best of the best.
Yeah.
And we have a great volunteer manager who takes care of our volunteers. That's why we have so many. That's why they keep coming back.
Yeah.
We have a great store manager who has, our proceeds of the store has risen a lot in the past few years. Plus, we moved from that little 5,000 square foot building, by the way.
Yeah.
So now we've grown. We were in a capital campaign. That was successful. But it is tough, because it's tough work, who the case manager is, what they're dealing with every day. But I think having the strength of a good team, keeping each other going, and the support of the community, the Interfaith Coalition,
Great.
we're just so blessed by a really great community who are there a lot and all the time. And they've been with us for years.
Yeah.
They don't come and go. I mean, we've had support for a long time, and that gives us that strength to keep going, I think.
Heather, how about you? You're a fairly young person. Get as old as I am, and it's kind of like I've seen it all. But even I still get discouraged a lot. You're kind of starting out, and you again are with people that at their deepest need. Where does your resiliency come from?
Right. So I will reiterate what Joan said, having a great team really helps, and especially the volunteers. Our volunteers really try to treat our clients with respect, and they become friendly with them and have that great interaction with the clients. And so I think that really helps the clients feel like, okay, these people do really care about me. I'm not just a number to them. But also just, you have to celebrate the small victories. You know, it may be that the client actually showed up for their appointment instead of canceling this time and are meeting with that financial counselor, or, you know, they got an interview. They may not have got the job yet, but they went to that interview, they were excited, they put their best foot forward. So I think it's just celebrating those little small victories.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's really good.
That is a good point. And I'll add to it, the client that we're referring to that's in the New Moves program, she just spoke to us a couple weeks ago, and to hear her story from start to finish, it's heart-wrenching. She went through some domestic violence issues. She lost her children. She got her children back. She was homeless. Now she has a home. And at the end of the story, then we can say, that's why we do what we do. It's so important to stick with it, because the small victories and then to hear the success of someone back on their feet. That's what it's
So what's the future look like? What's your vision for the organization and for the ministry, and what 5 years from now, what would you like to be doing?
What are we doing 5 years from now? Well, right now we're focused on the education piece. We're working on the financial literacy classes. Since we did move into our new facility, we have the space to do that now. So we're doing budget and savings classes. What are the other ones that we're looking at for next year? I know you have a...
For the budgeting and savings, we're trying to tackle the credit card debt, things like that. Also planning for different ways to manage that budget for food, because when they aren't utilizing our food pantry anymore, that's how to stretch those food dollars, things like that. We also have UFFNEP, they come in and do a nutrition class, so not just getting that food, but making sure you're getting healthy food and taking care of yourself to help keep those medical costs down as well.
We're also, the board just finished a strategic plan that we're kind of reviewing the programs we've been doing for years, and are they making a difference? And we're measuring outcomes and looking at all that, and are they successful? And so we're reviewing those too.
Good. Now, you handed me a bag before we came in here.
I did.
Now, tell me about what's in the bag and who's involved in that, and who what that program is.
Yeah. So I gave you the bag that refers to Kids of Hope. So Kids of Hope is a program we started in 2009, and it was actually developed because of a student volunteer that said, I'm going to this high school that's local, and I'm seeing kids that get free or reduced lunch, and I don't know what they're eating when they're out of school. It was that statement that we said, okay, let's see if we can get some support to provide lunches. So we did a summer lunch program. And I think we had 200 children registered that year. Now we're serving 500, between 500 to 600 children are registered. So now 13 weeks throughout the year, they get 5 days worth of lunches for every day they're out of school for 13 weeks. And when the families come and pick up their supplemental food at the pantry, they can go to the Kids of Hope table and get the extra lunches. And they're easy open things for kids that if the parents are working, the kids are home, easy open cans, just things that they can manipulate and not have to cook or whatever. There are hundreds of volunteers that help with that program too. So the bags are given to groups if the volunteers are too young or maybe too old to come to our facility to volunteer. We can give them a pack of these bags, and they decorate them. They're beautiful. And sometimes they'll put inspirational messages in them, biblical messages that just gives them, uplifting moment of eating their lunch, I guess.
Well, mine
it's
was
really
awesome.
sweet. It's really sweet. So, and then once a year, those kids are then invited to our Back to School Bash, Kids of Hope Back to School Bash, and they're given everything they need to start school. So that's another event where we have hundreds of volunteers, and a church hosts that as well. So you can tell we're really surrounded by the faith community and them giving us the support of their facilities.
I love that.
And then we have our 5K in March, and that's hosted at a church too.
Oh my goodness! Just a kind of question I hadn't planned on. How did you recruit the churches, or did the churches come to you, or how did it happen?
So that was actually this time of year, 2008. Chrissy and I had this little it looked like, well, they weren't iPads back then, but there was this little screen, and we showed a little video of how we hoped the churches could come together. We found that some of the churches had families that were going pastor to pastor to pastor asking for money.
Yep.
And so one of the churches came to us and said, what about we give you the money? We send people to your facility,
Gotcha.
and then we talk to you about how that's going. So
Gotcha.
sometimes it's a parishioner and sometimes it's not.
I guess.
So 15 churches showed up at that first meeting, and I'd say most of them are still with us now.
Wow, that's
And
great.
so it's great. Yeah, the
Yeah.
support is great. Lots of volunteers come from the Interfaith Coalition.
That's fantastic.
So we're
Well,
really supportive.
and I love the fact that you're providing a service that the church is usually not very good at, because that's not their major, area of expertise. But the fact that, again, you're part of the body of Christ too, because what you're doing is partly out of your faith walk as well. So that's just exactly how it ought to work. Well, we're out of time, and I hate this because this is such an interesting story, and I never can. I am so inspired by people who work in their own communities with their neighbors. When the Lord said, "Love your neighbor as yourself," He meant your neighbor. The one that was right in front of you.
Right.
And so that's what you're doing. And you've been CEO there for how long?
8 years.
8 years. Okay. And you've been there all told for how long?
For 5 years working, and then maybe a couple months as an intern.
Man. Well, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for joining us and our panelists, Joan Faulkner and Heather Gergen. On Power Talks, remember that these discussions are just that. They're discussions among us. But we'd love to see you continue the discussions at home. Go a step further. Get involved in your community. Because when Power Talks, you're empowered through the voice of truth. See you next time.
You just watched Power Talks, a Good Life 45 original production that makes you part of our Hope Team here on Good Life 45, where hope happens.